The Scarab God versus Yuriko, the Tiger Shadow. Well, we can get up to 4 mana pretty quickly there, but there's nothing... Well, we could go for Demonic Tutor. Yeah, we'll keep that. Just a choked estuary for our opponent. Okay, Coalition Relic is good. We can get into that fairly quickly as well. That's probably what we're doing next turn, actually. The Scarab God is a 5-mana Dimir commander, a 5/5. At the beginning of your upkeep, each opponent loses X life and you scry X, where X is the number of zombies you control. For 4 mana, you can exile a creature from a graveyard and create a token copy of it that is a 4/4 black zombie. And when the Scarab God dies, you return it to your hand at the beginning of the next end step. Let's go for our dual land here. And I think it's Coalition Relic. Hopefully our opponent doesn't go after some kind of fast shooter, because that would make me wish that I'd gone for the Mesmeric Orb. In fact, let's go for the Mesmeric Orb here, because if I know anything, Yuriko does want to stack the top of the library, because we play Yuriko on the channel. That is Commander Ninjutsu of 2. It's a 1/3. Whenever a ninja you control deals combat damage to a player, reveal the top card of your library and put it into your hand. Each opponent loses life equal to its CMC. Now, I think we're pretty reliant on Demonic Tutor next turn. We'd actually quite like to discard some stuff here. Okay, Crucible of Worlds means that our opponent's getting a land drop every single turn. Definitely with the Mesmeric Orb. Okay, there's a Muldrifter and a Hedron Crab there. Yeah, let's have a look at our library here with Demonic Tutor. Ideas Unbound is something because we can discard this stuff that's in our hand. I think going for Living Death is okay though, because we are going to be using a lot of self-mill. Yeah, so let's just leave it at that. I don't think we're going to Limdul's Vault, but we'll leave up the mana for Coalition Relic, just in case we are eager to go for Limdul's Vault. And a Bloodstained Mire from out of the graveyard for our opponent to get themselves another dual land. Oh wow, and just straight up hardcasting Yuriko the Tiger Shadow. Okay. Don't know if I've ever seen that before. 6 cards in our opponent's hand, so they don't really seem to have the cards that they would like to in hand. Put a charge counter on the relic and tap that, so that we mill more next turn. Oh, we get into a Reanimate, which isn't awful. We have Bloodghast in the graveyard, and not a whole lot else actually. Oh, no, we have It That Betrays. Let's go for a single black mana. Yeah, I think Living Death is pretty safe to get down now, actually. It gets rid of our opponent's commander, and it gets us some good stuff into play. We draw a couple of cards, hopefully... Well, I was going to say, hopefully one of them is a land, but apparently not. Yeah, we could really do with a land, because Hedron Crab is going to get us even more mill with that, but obviously we need lands for mana as well. And there's a Ponder from our opponent. It That Betrays is going to be really good here, because it's actually probably going to solidify us the game if we get to swing in with it next turn. Has Annihilator 2. Yeah, and our opponent didn't get anything with the Ponder. This is Annihilator 2. And whenever an opponent sacrifices a non-land permanent, put that card onto the battlefield under your control. So they probably just would have sacked 2 lands here and tried to rely on Crucible, but they weren't quite fast enough there. Our opponent didn't really do anything that game. So we'll get on with the next one. The Scarab God versus Nargila the Blade Blossom. Well, we have a counterspell at least. We can hold that up on turn 2 if our opponent manages to rush out their commander. We'll keep that. In worst case scenario, we can hopefully Damnation pretty soon, because this thing really loves to get down a lot of creatures. Whenever a warrior attacks, you may have its controller put down a 1/1 warrior token, tapped and attacking, and then for Wooburg, untap all attacking creatures. They can trample, lifelink and haste, and after this there's an additional combat phase. There's a glimpse of the unthinkable that we can mill ourselves with. That is 2 mana, mill 10. The Scarab God is a 5 mana Dimir commander, 5/5. At the beginning of your upkeep, each opponent loses X life and you scry X, where X is the number of zombies you control. For 4 mana, we can exile a creature from a graveyard and reanimate it as a 4/4 black zombie, and when it dies, it comes back to our hand at the beginning of the end step. Seems as though we might be seeing our opponent's commander, so let's hold up Counterspell. They're going to be able to recast it next turn if they get another land into play. They've managed to ramp a little bit there. And if they don't get down their commander here, I might just let them play out warriors, but they are doing. I was going to say I might just let them play out warriors into a damnation. So they've lost themselves a turn there. They need a land to get down Najeela again. Okay, Massacre Worm is probably really good if they get down a hell of a lot of tokens. That might hold me off on Damnation. Let's go for black mana. And we'll glimpse ourselves. And see what we get into with that. Any creatures? I don't think there's any creatures in there, actually. Yeah, that is just a bunch of mana that we've milled there. So hopefully that doesn't mean that we're not going to draw into any mana for the rest of the game. And there's the land drop for our opponent, so they may well just be going for their commander here. Nope, they go for Lavisa Cold Eyes, which is a +2 buff for warriors. So that switches off Massacre Worm. Okay, Reanimate would have been a really good draw had we actually have gotten into anything last turn. Let's get down Demonic Tutor and see if we can do anything else. Yeah, I think going for, what is that spell called? Ideas Unbound. Because we can do that now, and it will allow us to discard Grizzlebrand. When do we discard these? Discard 3 cards at the beginning of the next end step. We don't have a blue card for Force of Will, unfortunately. But I think I feel okay about discarding both of the creatures in our hand, thanks to Living Death. So let's get rid of Reanimate, Massacre Worm and Grizzlebrand. I don't think I'm going to be able to lose too much life to Reanimate. And we have Animate Dead and Living Death in hand anyway. Just hoping for a land next turn now, but worst case scenario we can go for Animate Dead onto Grizzlebrand and draw some cards. Where did the haste? Does this give haste as well? Oh, I didn't realise Lavisa gives haste as well. Okay. The plan might be Damnation in that case, because we're losing a lot of life here. Oh, but we get into that land, so that's really good. Let's go for Living Death. And unfortunately the Massacre Worm comes down too late to drain our opponent of anything. But it's still a 6/5. Now, I'm not going to draw any cards yet. Oh, and our opponent scoops to that. That's a shame. Maybe they don't have any other warriors in play. We did have another Damnation for when they get their warrior army into play. But I'm not too sure. They should have scooped there. Void Winnower. Wonder. Well, we were getting into mana, and that was a means of reanimating something else, although we already had an Animate Dead in hand. Yeah, we didn't actually have a whole heap coming in. We would have drawn into another card next turn. It that betrays, yeah. Yeah, we were drawing into our reanimation targets, but no means of getting them into our graveyard, unfortunately. So yeah, it's another short game with the Scarab God. Tends to be the case sometimes, apparently. We'll get on with another one. Alright, let's see if we can get a real game on the go. I have no doubt that Teferi Temporal Archmage will not scoop. Captain Obnoxious. Let's see here. I mean, we have Mesmeric Orb and a Force of Will. We can maybe Muldrifter for 3 if we get into another land. We'll keep that and hope that we can get something going. It's not a good hand, but I've been trying all night to get a good Scarab God video, so I'm pretty much giving up on trying to actually win a game. I'll be more than happy to lose a game if it means getting an actual complete game under wraps. Teferi, Temporal Archmage, is a 6 mana Planeswalker commander, 5 loyalty. +1 is look at the top 2 cards, one goes in your hand and the other goes on the bottom. -1 untaps 4 target permanents. -10 is an emblem. You may activate loyalty abilities of Planeswalkers you control at instant speed. Mana Vault comes down. This is typically what you see with Teferi. Lots of mana rocks, because as soon as Teferi comes down it can untap all of them. So let's see about... A Mesmeric Orb is good, I think. It will scupper our opponent's plans if they go for a fast shooter, like a mystical tutor. We get rid of a memory lapse from them. And there we go, we've got Teferi already. So let's go for Force of Will. I don't really want to get rid of the Muldrifter, but I also don't want to deal with a Teferi either. Alright, we get into a black source, which is good. Not that we can do anything with it. Let's just go like that and pretend to hold up counter magic. Our opponent can't untap the Mana Vault because they don't have 4 mana. They may well play a land and then go for the untap next turn. But it's looking like they don't actually have another land, so that's really good for us. Oh, no, they're just waiting for their second main phase to play that. Wow, and a Treasure Cruise for just 1 mana. Our Mesmeric Orb really helping them out there. So they're back up to 7 cards. And then search for Azcanta. We are going to tap blue mana and then untap it to try and make our opponent play around counter magic. And then we'll tap all our mana so that it will untap with the Mesmeric Orb. And we get an Athalia Drownyard into play, and that is again all we can do. We kept a pretty poor hand. We'll just mill ourselves again with Athalia Drownyard. Search for Azcanta. They get to look at the top card of their library and decide whether to... Does it go in the graveyard? Yeah, they decide whether to put it into the graveyard or not. Excellent card filtering. Search for Azcanta. Now, they may well be playing around counter magic because they're not doing anything. Either that or all they have in hand is counter magic. Let's mill ourselves a little bit. And we'll have a look at our graveyard. I don't think it's going to be relevant, but we've got Stinkweed Imp, Noxious Gearhulk, Frantic Search, Hedron Crab, some lands, our Reanimator's in there, Void Winnower is in there as well. So we do have some targets. And we're about to get even more when we untap. We could dredge the Stinkweed Imp, but I don't think we really care about doing that, so let's just leave it. Vampiric Tutor is not awful. Actually, Vampiric Tutor is quite awful, because we have Mesmeric Orb in play, so we're not going to be able to draw into it. That feels pretty bad. Okay, well all we can do is use the Vampiric Tutor as an Entomb, pass it over to our opponent. We're at quite the stalemate. Our opponent needs 8 mana to get Teferi into play. A Thran Dynamo will get them into Teferi next turn. So we'll just have to allow that. There's nothing else we can do. And then more mana rocks, as you would expect in a Teferi deck. We'll just go for the Athalia Drownyard again and continue to load up our graveyard. Yeah, that's unlucky. We've got Animate Dead in the graveyard as well now. So I don't really see that there's a whole lot else we can do now. We can play Limdal's Vault, and we have to play around the fact that the top 2 cards will get milled. So let's just carry on playing for the fun of it. We're going to see a Teferi next turn. So this game is just going to be for all the people that like to see Teferi, Temporal Archmage, all those terrible people. Noteworthy that the search for Azcanta has flipped into Azcanta the Sunken Ruin. And I think our opponent's just going to pass the turn over to us. That's Limdal's Vault in response. See if that actually resolves. It does. We're going to pay life. We don't want to see any of that. Yeah, we don't care about any of that either. Okay, Living Death and Mana Drain I don't mind getting into at all. So let's say no. And then Wasteland doesn't look like it's going to do... Well, we could get rid of the Azcanta with it if we want to. Okay, so let's go... Yeah, we're going to mill most of these things across a turn or two. That's the only problem, so we have to go... we can mill the islands first. And then we'll mill these two the turn after. Or we don't necessarily have to if we don't untap, do we? Yeah, so we'll go Wasteland, Mana Drain, Living Death, and then the two islands, and we'll mill the two islands at the beginning of our turn. We're not actually going to be able to play the Living Death, unfortunately. There's the other Delve card that Blue loves, Dig Through Time. So they get to look at the top 7 cards of their library. 2 go into the hand of their choice, and the rest go on the bottom. And then looking at the top 4 cards with Search for Azcanta, and they get themselves into a Time Warp, so that is extra turns. No doubt they'll be going for the extra turn at this point. Although they might play around Counter Magic. I'm just letting our opponent play things out here. They've gotten into Sapphire Medallion and the Teferi, Temporal Archmage. And now they're tapping down for more stuff. They have a full grip. Oh, and there we go. There is Emrakul, the Promised End, so they will control us during our next turn. So we are just going to F6 through all of this, and for any of you that are interested in how a Teferi deck plays, I have shown Teferi on the channel a couple of times, but for anyone who's interested, I'm just going to let this play out because I'm not all that interested in continuing with this game. Apparently the only way I can get a complete game going with Scarab God is if I don't quit. So I'll just let this game reach its completion, or somewhat of a completion at least, and then we will leave it at that for today. A quick extra turn card for our opponent there. Another extra turn card for our opponent, so they should just swing in twice with Emrakul. And there we go, there is a win for Teferi, Temporal Archmage. They got more mana going more quickly than we did, but we kept a really poor opening hand, to be honest. During this recording session I've kind of given up with trying to get a game going with the Scarab God, because as soon as people see some really high-powered reanimated stuff on the board, they just tend to scoop, as you saw at the beginning of the video. So I decided to just try and get at least one complete game going, and for any of you who are interested in Teferi Temporal Archmage, you get to see how this deck tends to be run at least. So that's that. Our opponent isn't passing priority for some reason. There we go, eventually got there. That was the Scarab God. We've just been beaten down by Teferi Temporal Archmage. I'm Tribal Kai on the EDH channel. Thank you for watching.